You know, I was on a panel once where there was a sober moment with four other guys. We're all older. We're in our 60s now. Some are in their 70s. And the young guy was asking, he said, if you could talk to a younger you and go back 20 years, what advice would you give yourself? Everyone had a rather poignant comment that they made about what they would have, more time with your family, take care of your health. I'm sorry. You know what came to my Ashkenazi Jewish memory? Here's what I said. If I could talk to myself 20 years ago, I'd be saying, invest in Google, Apple, Amazon, and gold. Gold in 20 years went up 579%. If you could talk to yourself 20 years ago and you put your money in, you'd be a multimillionaire right now. And here's the thing. 5 years ago, I started talking about gold. It's gone up 75%. You think that in the era of Trump, Doge, tariff wars, and the instability of the globe, you don't think that there's going to be instability economically? Trust me, there will be. What I want you to do is I want you to go to lancewallnau.com/gold, and you want to get your free copy of the Ultimate Guide to Gold for the Trump era, because I want you smart. You don't have to be looking back on what you missed. Over the next couple of years, you will be so glad you took this action. You can take and roll over your retirement, your IRA, whatever happens in that dumpster fire of the dollar, you're set stable because gold has a track record. Go to lancewallnau.com/gold and prepare for the future. Let's get into today's show. Wild show today. I'll tell you what, we can hardly keep up with the speed at which stuff's happening. And most of it's being generated by El Presidente Trump. He's just creating shockwaves through Europe, through the markets, through everywhere. But Mercedes, glad you're here with us today.
I'm so happy to be here, Lance.
Let's start with a surprise update. Not for you maybe now that you've heard about it, but I introduced it today and the staff didn't even know. That Dan Bongino is going to have to step outside of his great Rumble show. He's got millions of people every day. There's a big sacrifice involved in this. I mean, the guy's got a TV show like he picked up a lot of Russia's audience. But he's been asked to serve. Sebastian Gorka's been putting pressure on him. I've seen it behind the scenes. Like, come on, Dan, serve your country. Put the microphone aside, Dan, because Sebastian stepped out for his Salem program. These guys, when you're not in office, you do, I guess, commentary on TV. Great news for law enforcement and American justice, President Trump announced. Dan Bongino, a man of incredible love and passion for our country, has been named the next deputy director of the FBI by the man who will be the best ever director, Kash Patel. Kash and Dan are friends. Look at that. Dan, I didn't know this, has a master's degree in psychology from New York, an MBA from Penn State, a member of the New York Policy Department, a highly respected special agent with the United States Secret Service, and now one of the most successful podcasters in the country, something he's willing and prepared to give up in order to serve, working with our great new United States Attorney General Pam Bondi and Director Kash Patel. Fairness, justice, law, and order will be brought back to America quickly. What a fascinating development. Are you, do you keep up with Dan Bongino at all? Are you aware of young millennial who he is?
I don't know if I get my news from Dan Bongino, but I know a lot of people that do. So I'm excited for him. But man, does that leave a big gap? I mean, he kind of took over for Rush. So where are people going to go now?
Well,
the Lance Wallnau Show, that's where.
Yeah, well, just pray that I'm not put in charge of security. Let's hear what Dan Bongino has to say here. And I haven't heard this yet. Let's hear his response.
But I am going in this clear-eyed. Vision of President Trump, Attorney General Bondi, and Director Patel. I am going to do my job to implement that vision. And I can tell you right now, we are going to try our best. Every single thing I have in me, every single strand of DNA cell in my body is going to be dedicated towards keeping this homeland safe, no matter what. No matter what, that's my job. We're going to reestablish faith in this institution. And the good people there doing their job, hitting the streets, developing sources. We'll have your back. We are going to reestablish faith in this institution. The FBI belongs to the American people. Doesn't belong to me. Doesn't belong to anyone else but the American people. But this is the honor of a lifetime, and it's a serious mission. And I plan on implementing that vision.
This is what makes America great, folks. I mean, the guy's going to give up millions of dollars of income in order to serve the president and to do the best he can. And, you know, he was so critical of the Secret Service and how it was not protecting the president in his 2 attempted assassination attempts, that he takes this real seriously. And what's funny is I watched Trump meet him really for the first time doing the Dan Bongino interview around the convention, around the Republican National Convention.
Wow.
And they had a little room there, and they were just getting to know each other. So he's kind of emerged as a personality on Trump's radar in the last couple of years. So I'm happy about that. The combination of Kash Patel, Pam Bondi, and Bongino, and now you look at the work that's being done to take, because Trump's got to work on that 10 million illegals that came in during the Biden administration, starting with the first layer being the gangs and the fentanyl thugs and the cartel placements. And they're not getting the numbers they wanted. Trump just fired the guy that was in charge of the identifying and deporting because he was only getting 600 a day. Well, these people are embedded, man. These are criminals. They're not putting like a sign out front saying, "Hello, I'm here from the cartel." It's like so they got to ferret them out. Then they got sanctuary cities and sanctuary territory where the Democrats are creating a layer of confusion and frustration and even accessing where they are. But Trump said, no, 600 is not enough. I got to get 5,000 a day. And so he's got a quota he's going for in there. I think Bongino is going to be working close with Patel. Now, Patel said he's taking 1,000 agents that were, I don't know what they were doing in Washington, but he just dispersed them. Go out to the country. Your job is to go do casework. And the big scandal that they're not talking about, but was covered by Glenn Beck and others, is that the FBI said, stop, during Biden's administration, stop hunting domestic terrorists based upon dangerous groups coming through the border. Focus on white supremacists and MAGA patriots. I'm serious. Find the profile. The new target is domestic. Remember Biden, the idiot, talking about domestic extremism, meaning Trump supporters, who, as you see, are not the problem. But the FBI had to go do casework on trying to curate and cultivate anything they could, which is why they went after so aggressively the January 6th protests, because it was political, and the left was using the muscle and power of our corrupted institutions against the American people as a political class. So you prayed for it. Now you're getting it. An all-star cast. Wrecking Ball Layer 1, Wrecking Ball Layer 2, working with Wrecking Ball Pam Bondi, working with Kash Patel, working with ICE. It's going to be, it's interesting to be alive at a time like this. And I'm going to flip the subject. Any thoughts on this, Mercedes, before I go? Okay. I'm going to flip the subject to something completely unrelated. And that's global instability, as Pope Francis is in critical condition with early kidney failure.
Wow.
He remains alert. He's sitting in a chair, his oxygen coming into him. But I mean, he's 88 years old, folks. And he's battling pneumonia and a complex lung infection and experiencing kidney failure. He himself said that should he come out of this and not be able to function, he's going to turn this over to the College of Cardinals, and you're going to have a new global figure, which my charismatic Pentecostal community will have great interest in, because we've always kind of been of the opinion that the renegade Catholicism of Rome, not all Catholics, not Cardinal what's his name, Vigano, we really like?
Archbishop Vigano?
Archbishop Vigano?
I think it's
There are some real champions there, but the couple in Texas that have been boldly punished by the Pope for speaking their mind, but that the Vatican could eventually become the seat of what's called the false prophet in the book of Revelation, which is a European entity of global religious status that is going to align itself with a counterfeit political figure who will come in like a Trumpian populist who's going to bring order. Then you'll find out that behind that is the Machiavellian and sinister agenda of global dominance in a technological bureaucracy of a one world government, one world economy. What you see with the rise of Trump and what's happening in Germany and in France, the elections, which is why I cover a different way than most prophets do, because I've immersed myself, for one reason or another, into the Seven Mountain realm, which takes the global economic interaction of nations and politics and governance into the full spectrum of the satanic hierarchy, which will be the Antichrist's ultimate domain. And I read the events that are happening, starting in 2016, when I diverted from my church path as a church preacher into getting into strange waters, which was talking about Donald Trump as a modern-day Cyrus and the rise of Cyrus rulers, the recapturing of the mountains of media, government, economics, and education in nations that would resist the assimilation and collapse into the beast system, which would be called sheep nations. As the Bible talks in Matthew 25. Sheep nations are those that will resist the global bureaucracy from Davos, with the oligarchs there linking with communist China and dictators to basically snuff out freedom. You're seeing the snuffing out of freedom in England in a scary way. You're seeing it in Germany in a scary way. But Donald Trump represents the beginning of a populist, I would say a Holy Spirit-inspired pushback on the entire matrix of principalities and powers globally, shoving them back so that there's an end-time move of God in a harvest. We're living in the days of Great Awakening. It'll take a couple of years before this awareness settles into a historic legitimacy and a narrative that we talk about, like it's, oh yeah, well, that was like the beginning of the awakening. You're in it right now.
Amen.
And you see it in its political manifestation, and you see it in its religious manifestation, which is why, coming back to the Pope, the interesting thing in my research on sheep nations and goat nations, which was stimulated by a best-selling book from a Hebrew professor who wrote a book, The Virtue of Nationalism. And as I studied the book, he made the case, not a Christian, but a brilliant scholar, a Jewish professor. And he made the argument that there's three kinds of structures for societies. There's anarchy and tribalism, which is when you have one people group pitted against another people group, and you have, like tribal, like almost like the Middle East, tribe against tribe and people against people and Houthi against, these guys. And so what you've got now is the tribalistic anarchy is where America was heading. The left, the progressives were taking us into the deconstruction of social cohesion, creating anarchy with an ultimate economic collapse that would reshuffle into what would have been a progressive dictatorship. Trump interrupted that. When we come back, I'll explain to you the other two systems and how this Pope and his replacement plays a prophetic role in the reordering of the end-time chess game.
We're entering a period of time that has increased hostility against people of faith. It's a time when Christians are going to be tested on a moral, physical, psychological, and even a financial basis. I'm here to remind you that God is the one who has blessed you thus far, and he will take care of you in the future. You have a divine responsibility, however, to see trouble and prepare yourself. For example, with record inflation eating away at the value of the US dollar, the savings in your retirement account is in danger of slipping away. I recommend diversifying your 401k or IRA out of paper assets and into physical gold. And the best way to do that is with a gold IRA from Birch Gold Group. Now that includes no penalties, there's no taxes when you transfer current retirement funds into Birch Gold. To see how it works, I want you to go to lancewallnau.com/Birch and get your free info kit, and you'll be glad that you did.
Once again, the author, that was Yoram Hazony, and he has a PragerU video, by the way, if you want to see a 5-minute version of his book. There it is. Look at it. My team is so fast. Such a sharp team. The Virtue of Nationalism by Professor Hazony. Now, what he says is that 1/3, the three scenarios for the globe is, one is anarchy, where you have the collapse of culture, which is what was happening in America. You were seeing tribalism, the destruction of cohesion, the loss of faith as a common ground, the confusion of languages like Babel, the opening of borders, and then tribalism, people against people, black against white, Black Lives Matter, and Antifa anarchy, and then the technocrats and the bureaucrats and the oligarchs, the Soroses running the big game, and it creating this fragmentation, the balkanizing of culture, so that it's people against people, and you stop. What the Bible warns is that the love of many shall wax cold in the last days, and therefore lawlessness arises. Lawlessness arises when you no longer feel a common bond with another citizen, and everybody's out for themselves. Well, the second category of structure is the modern nation state. A nation state has boundaries and borders, a history. That it's what unites us, so that a kid that's up in Boston in a war can go serve with a kid from San Diego. One can be Latino, the other one could be African American or Asian American or Caucasian. But when they show up in the same Marine unit going through training, where are you from? Well, I'm from Toledo, and I'm from Miami, and they all have cohesion as Americans because they have a history. They have a common language, a common culture, a common story, a common lineage, and a common faith. That Judeo-Christian worldview that is like the cement that holds those bricks in place. So all our individuality is cemented together by a shared history and a shared faith. Break it down, you got a pile of bricks, you've got rubble, you've got that first category, which is tribal anarchy. Or you have a nation state of language and borders, of custom and tradition, of unity and patriotism. That's nationalism. Now, the third option is called unhealthy nationalism, and that's where you have China, which wants to assimilate the Asian Pacific Rim. It wants to take Taiwan. North Korea wants to take South Korea, Japan, Philippines, Indonesia, collapsing into the Asian Pacific Rim. It's what happened with the Soviet Union. It's called empire. You got to catch this. The beast system is the system of empire. Empire is a country that doesn't have boundaries. It expands and takes over other people's nations. So the Nazis in Germany were a nation, and they consider it nationalists, but it's unhealthy nationalism because they had the spirit of empire, which means they expanded to take over other countries. The Soviet Union, in winning the Second World War, was an empire spirit. It expanded to take over Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Poland, all of the Eastern European states that have since then shaken off the yoke of Soviet tyranny and became their own nation states. That's why they are the ones that are the sheep nation's greatest hope. Why? Because Viktor Orban in Hungary and in Poland and in Slovakia, they remember in the 1980s, as late as that, the tyranny of Soviet persecution. Once they came into their freedom, they're very keen on having healthy nationalism. They want their country strong. They want their borders secure. They want their culture to be Christ-centered. And it's an interesting story going on in history right now. And it comes back to the Pope, because here was my interesting discovery. Hazony says, the Catholic Church, historically, was the spirit of empire, because they didn't just evangelize, they created nations aligned with their political, with the popes. So the wars of Europe that happened in the up to the 1550s, where they finally established the Peace of Habsburg, which would be where nation states started to be created. And where did it come from? It came because of religious wars. The Catholic Church unified Spain and Italy and various other nations in wars against the Protestants, who really just wanted to be free. Germany decided, we're a Protestant nation. So there was wars, and that's why people talk about religion creates wars. No, there's been far fewer deaths from religious wars than from dictatorships like Mao and Stalin and Hitler. But the point is, Catholicism has at its roots empire, which is why the book we wrote talks about the rising of political figures in the fallen away Roman Catholic Church and the rise of dictators, oligarchs, one-worlders like you have at Davos. And we cover that in the book.
We do cover that in the book.
We literally wrote this in 2020.
God's chaos code.
With Trump on the cover. I predicted he was going to be coming back as the agent of chaos against, not chaos against order, but chaos against, he's a counter-revolution against the revolution that was taking over the United States with a weird, perverse amalgam of woke identity politics, LGBTQ, this, that, race, etc., into the Marxist idea of collapsing the middle class and creating a one government, one economy, where it's communist in nature. The government controls who gets what. And so Donald Trump becomes the agent of chaos to the devil, and he breaks up his revolution with a counter-revolution, which is restoring sovereign nation states. I know it's a big theory of the case, but we wrote it 5 years ago, and it's accurately playing out nation by nation as we predicted. Even some of the names of the rulers are the sheep nation rulers. You've got El Salvador rising up, Argentina rising up. You're seeing the rise of Cyrus. I call them Cyrus-type rulers, Isaiah 45. These are rulers that are raised up in answer to the prayers of God's people for someone who will push back on the anarchy and the empire and create a strong nation. I've never put it that clearly, but that's what I had to say.
I like it so much. And it makes me think, too, how we wrote in the book. And I'll also take two thoughts. One, we need to pray for the Catholic Church and the selection of the new pope, because unfortunately it does seem like that's imminent. That's very sad, but it's imminent, but it's an opportunity. I mean, you're looking across the globe right now, and there is a rejection of wokeism. And to have another Pope John Paul II, which we wrote about in the book, that opposed communism.
A great pope. And
was
let me say
pope.
that.
That's
so
what I'm
there
saying.
have been deliverers that have been raised up, and John Paul II, he was instrumental in bringing down the Berlin Wall. He worked with Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan to tear down the tyranny of the Soviet Empire. So it's like the American political system. You look, it is so disgusting when you see the layers of self-serving corruption and bureaucracy. And wait till we get the files out from Epstein to JFK to MLK. Your confidence in your institutions is going to take a blow, but God puts exactly the right vigilantes at the top of these institutions to say, yeah, and we're here to fix that.
Well, you think too, Lance, I mean, the whole story, I mean, we write about it, but the whole story, right? He ends up going to Poland. The Polish Pope ends up going to Poland under communist rule and on Pentecost, no less, on the day of Pentecost, and gives one of the most prolific speeches in the face of all of these people staring at him, where God has been suppressed and pushed down and they're not even allowed to worship. And he talks about why we need to have nations. Actually, he talks about that nations were in the upper room. And it's a fascinating...
You're right. He talked about the tongues of every nation were represented, filled with the Spirit, calling out to God in their own native tongue from their country. And he tied it into Pentecost as he preached.
And what was the response from the people?
The people spontaneously, 1 million people, one of the largest gatherings, probably the largest evangelistic gathering in history as far as I know. They cried out, "We want God. We want." This is after, since 1940s, the suppression of religion, the persecution of faith. We want God. And they cried out over and over and over again. And you could see them closing the blinds at the KGB. They were watching. They were dropping they were looking out at this thing from their government windows and realizing, oh man, the hunger of the people for God is what brought the Berlin Wall down and liberated those nations. Now we come back. What pope will be raised up? We should be praying for this because we're in the era of awakening. And some people would even say that they assassinate popes in the Vatican if they become dangerous. There's stories of that, but I can't say one way or the other. But it is a political organization as well as an empire. But it also has the vestiges of true Christianity. Peel it back to 2000. Remember, Derek Prince taught me this. He said, rather than being anti-Catholic, for you're a Protestant, remember they were the ones that actually protected the scripture, that kept the original documents, that guarded the purity of the history of the first, of 500 years of Christianity, 1,000 years of Christianity, so that you have what you have today. So there is a story there about the early Catholic Church. But I'm going to my X account here. I think I have it pinned for a couple of days. While you're on this show, you could go there and read my document. Will this pope expire? Will he live? Who will be the next pope? Do you know the names of who the candidates are? Or do you have a name that I don't have listed here? So here's what I got. Some bad options. I'm just putting it out there. Remember these names. Cardinal Pietro Parolin, age 70. He's the Vatican Secretary of State since 2013. They got a Secretary of State. They're political.
They got a wall, too.
They got a wall. Yeah, they got a wall. And they got a bank. Why is he popular? Because Parolin's a diplomat with extensive experience in Vatican governance. He's a moderate who could continue Pope Francis's policies. He's Italian in heritage, and most of our popes have been Italian. His work included managing the controversial Vatican-China deal on bishop appointments, so he knows how to compromise with communist China so that the church can stay politically alive with Rome, but I think he sacrificed the Christian influence in China in order to do that. We do not want Francis's policies continued. I'm going to say no on Pietro Parolin. Let's see what happens. The second candidate is Cardinal. Oh, I only got 7 seconds. Every inch of this program, I fill it with content. I don't want to go over 28 minutes, though. So tomorrow, we'll pick it up. I've got 3 bad candidates and 2 good ones. We're going to pray. Lord, during this period of great awakening, when you're moving in the earth, your church needs stability and not more progressive anarchy. I pray that you will put a servant in the office of the church that is Catholic, and that they will be part of the awakening of Europe, part of the awakening of your church in Africa, part of the awakening of your church. They won't push against, but they'll flow with your mighty spirit during this hour of revival, awakening, and reformation when you're raising up sheep nations. God, in your mercy, as you've done and you're doing in these countries electorally, let this next pope be compatible with the winds of the Spirit. In Jesus' name. Amen. We'll pick it up tomorrow. I'm going to give you the remaining 3 candidates. And then we got some other news. Man, we got big news. Because I got to talk about what's happened with Macron visiting with Trump in Washington, and Zelensky's crazy idea as to what he wants to do next. You don't want to miss tomorrow. This is prophetic news right as it's happening. Okay, see you tomorrow.
Just like all of you, I had problems sleeping. I had tried every pillow out there and nothing worked. I'd flip-flop all night, use my arm for support, and fall asleep, or I'd wake up with a sore neck or maybe a headache. Well, quality sleep comes from keeping your neck straight at night. You have to fill in that space between your head and your bed. That's why I invented MyPillow. MyPillow's patented fill adjusts to your exact individual needs, and it doesn't matter if you sleep on your back, stomach, side, or any combination of all 3.
When I got MyPillow, I'm asleep almost immediately. I stay asleep at night, and I wake up more well-rested in the morning.
So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get Classic King MyPillows for only $19.98. Queen size just $18.98. Standard Classic MyPillows only $14.98. That's right, only $14.98. Plus all orders $75 or more ship absolutely free.
Go to MyPillow.com and use promo code Lance to save big on all of Mike's best products. That's promo code Lance. Did you enjoy this latest episode? Please remember to share it with your friends, because the more knowledge you have, the better equipped you are to navigate the world.